Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD, if you want to follow me there on Twitter. And it's the start of the week, so you know what we do on Mondays. It's Mondays with McCool, James McCool from Pay Dirt DFS, the co-author with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com. I see you guys in the YouTube chat as always. Feel free to, I'll wave the thumb at you. Give me those thumbs early in the morning. Thumb in while you're in through the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. The notification bell to know when we go live. I'll be on later tonight for the showdown pre-lock show. But I see here in the YouTube chat, CJ Welch. Good morning. He says he wants to thank you for all your videos on lineup HQ and GPP strategy. I was new and got the optimizer week 1 well yesterday. Got second in the 150 max mini max for 7,500. Oh, can we find that?
Nice.
Let's see. Let's see. I didn't know about this. Let's see. That they've been updating results DB throughout the entire morning, so it's been a little slow. The mini max. So the 150 mini max. Is that the dollar? I mean, I can't play those contests. So which ones would they? Do we have this? Do we have it in here even? The 50-cent one? The 50 is it a 50 cent? 7,500? No, that would be second. So are you Camden's dad? If you're Camden's dad, that's $7,500, right? Mini max 7,500. So we got it. So Justin Herbert plus Mike Williams plus Jared Cook with Kareem Hunt as run back. So that's a 3+1. Then you got Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, secondary correlation. And then you play Kadarius Toney. You play Alexander Madison and the Vikings defense, a third correlation, and Kadarius Toney is a one-off. Beautifully constructed lineup. I mean, you can't get any better than this. Obviously, you could get 7.11 points better and win more money. To win these contests, 258. Jesus Christ,
dude.
Yeah, I mean it's 356. This is literally the hardest contest to win because of 356,000 entries. I mean, if we take a look, let me open up another results DB window. We take a look. It's all by field size, not by price. So like the millie, the $20 millie has 236,000 entries. The play action has 594. So that would be the hardest contest to win. So yeah, 200. Like this is more than the like it's. Do I want to do the thing where I go and if you played this lineup in the millie, how much would you have won? You probably don't want me to do that because I'm assuming
we never want that.
258.52 in the millie. No, would have came in second. Okay,
there you go.
Right, so Nikan and Cormer would have won, but you would have came in second. But that's still 150,000. But that's also a $20 lineup, not a 50-cent lineup.
He also would have taken down the power sweep.
Yeah, obviously, it's small entry stuff. That's a different story, of course. I'm just talking about if you're playing large entry stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, you can't build a lineup better than this, right? Because I mean, the fact that you were able to get 4 different correlations. What we got the 1, we got the 2, the fact that you got 3 different correlations in and still have high projected players. I mean, there you go. I mean, Kareem Hunt was good for the 4% ownership. Mike Williams for the 3% ownership. I mean, these are the 2 guys that probably did not project all that well, but not like low, but just in comparison to other people in their price range. But the fact that you're getting them at 4% and 3%, so that's perfectly fine. You know, Madison, Adams, I mean, even Toney and Chase. I mean, they're projected fine. Tight end is tight end. Who cares? You didn't need a big tight end to win. And there you go. Madison, you played chalk, in 2 spots pretty much, and then just build the best correlated lineup from there. No, this is a lineup that I possibly could have gotten to if I was playing more of the Browns Chargers game. Well, I didn't have Kareem Hunt or I didn't have Mike Williams, so I'm sorry, couldn't have gotten there. I was prioritizing other games, but no, this And I'm assuming in lineup HQ, you just went in and you said, give me lineups that have primary plus secondary plus third. And, you don't have to force all of them in. You don't have to play them like 3 correlations in 100% of your lineups. But if they work out this way, they work out this way. So they got this game isn't that complicated, right, James?
No. I mean, well, building out lineups is not that complicated. Getting lucky is where you really need things to roll your way, and hitting on the 1v1s and the 2v2s and stuff like that, especially on a slate like yesterday, where there were just, at least for me, there were some very, very obvious spots that just needed to be attacked. Like Alexander Mattison, I'm a person who, there are times where yesterday I'd been like, oh, Alexander Mattison, like I think you can build lineups without him. Nope, not yesterday. Yesterday I had him in all 3 of the lineups that I built. I started with him in every lineup, because it was like Alexander Mattison checked every single box yesterday. Every single box. He was under 6K. He was projecting for all the work. He was going up against a team that sucks. They were massive favorites on the slate. They had I think either the top or the second highest implied team total on the entire slate as Vikings. The Vikings love to run the ball in the red zone. Like every single box was checked by Madison yesterday. So I think that, one of the reasons why every single tout site on the planet was preaching their wins last night and this morning is like, there were so many things that just made sense. So a lot of GPPs and a lot of tournaments, I think, were decided by a lot of these 1v1s. Like you went with Alexander Mattison, you went with Devontae Adams, you went with one of the top overall implied team total teams. You had the Bucks, you had the who else? The Chargers projected pretty well. They had a pretty high team total. There were a lot of spots that just made sense. So I think yesterday, a lot of 1v1s and a lot of 2v2s. So that lineup was built really, really well with those correlations. The 1v1s, I think, were obviously where he ended up crushing and why he would have taken down so many tournaments if he'd have had the bankroll for it.
I had to talk about last week, we talked about you over projecting OBJ.
Oh yeah, I love it. Okay.
What was your in my aggregate? So I'm bringing it up right. I saved my lineup HQ screen from yesterday.
Okay.
In my aggregate, Alexander Mattison had the 3rd highest raw projection on the entire slate. So I had Derrick Henry at 24, Devontae Adams at 23.29, and then Madison at 22.6 over Kamara, over Moore, over Jefferson, over Eckler, over Harris. Where, I would have to assume the fact that, I played Madison in 60% of my lineups and in all my single entry 3 max lineups.
Yeah.
And I still think he was underowned. If we take a look at GPPs, you just jam this. A late news, 11:30 inactives type of news. In the Wildcat, I'm bringing up the results DB screen here. In the Wildcat, Alexander Mattison was 63% owned.
Yeah.
That's a 333, 150 max. That's what I expected. I expected in the higher stakes, in the slant, which is where I play 150. He was 53% owned.
Yeah.
I had 60%. And I could have gone even higher. In the Millie, he was 35. In the play action, the $3.20 max, 23% owned. So if you're playing low stakes, if you're playing in the play action, if you're playing let's bring up the mini max. What are the typically don't bring up the mini max? The mini max it's probably going to be a little bit higher. Yeah, 31%. So not that dramatic. Yeah, if you were playing the mini max yesterday and you wanted to lock button Alexander Mattison, I think he would have been plus EV in almost any lineup.
It was really hard. Yeah, it was really hard
at that ownership.
Yeah.
In the Wildcat at 63% owned, I think that was more closer to efficient.
Yeah.
Right. If you had 70%, I think his efficient ownership in a contest like the Wildcat was around 65 to 70%. So if you didn't play him in the Wildcat in some lineup, like that, I think that's perfectly fine. But when you're getting that much value by 23% of the field doesn't have him, only 23% of the field has him, and he should be 65% owned.
Yeah.
That delta means that instead, I know we talk with Daniel Hutchins, Nerdy Tenor. He plays the balance strategy. How much should he be owned? and I'm going to play him in that rate, like I try to exploit the field. So like to me, if you would have told me and I was playing the play action, he would have been in every single. He would have been the highest EV play of the entire slate by far.
Mhm.
And if he gets injured or bust or something, then so be it. But you can even see with Devontae Adams that at 8,200, in the play action, he was 19% owned. In the Wildcat, he was 36% owned. Like that gap, you could see, like the lower the stakes you go, like this is the reason why the game theory approach is a lot of times better served for higher stakes or smaller field contests,
Mhm.
because we say that the game theory, you're using game theory regardless, but there's a bigger difference in fading chalk, because a lot of people go like, okay, is this guy worth playing at this ownership?
Right.
And then they look at projected ownerships from like RotoGrinders, and we've tried to project for the millie, like that type of contest.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, well, is Devontae Adams going to be, 23% owned? How efficient is that? I think he should have been 28% owned. Okay, so you should be playing more of him. But which also means that in the play action, you should be he's 19% owned. You should play more of him. But you go, well, he's going to be the highest owned wide receiver. It's like, yeah, but he's still not high owned enough.
Right.
Right. But in the Wildcat, where he's 36% owned, well, that's over possibly his efficient ownership. So you may come in less, you may have less of him because he's less worthy of playing. That's the whole concept we explain in the course, theory of DFS.com. DFS is a game of relative value. You're trying to get as many points that you can that other people don't get. Okay? So now, obviously, you don't mind getting points that other people get if you can't get them anywhere else.
Mhm.
Alexander Madison's 5,500 when he should be 8,000. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to make that up, especially even if half the field is playing him, because maybe 60%, 70% of the field should be playing him. But in the cases where only 23% of the field is playing him, like you're getting like $2,500 worth of value from playing him for free that 77% of the field isn't getting. So why not play? Why not do that? So that's why when I talk about in the larger field contest, I tend to play less. It's weird to say I'm playing contrarian, but I'm playing less contrarian than in single entry or 3-max. Because the good plays are actually lower on than they should be.
Yeah.
But the good play in the Wildcat, now you can be, do I play a 25% owned CeeDee Lamb in the Wildcat? Well, possibly not. I'll play a Cooper instead, or I'll play Elliott, or I don't play that game. But in the play action or something, or the mini max, we haven't been okay. The mini max hasn't been updated for the late games because we're getting 0% on Lamb. So I assume Lamb was owned more than 0% of the mini max. But this is the difference. I know a lot of people that watch or listen to the show play lower stakes. Now the slant is probably the sharpest lower stakes contest because it has
Because a
the
lot of the
great
sharks play it.
right, because it has the best payout structure on the entire site. So sharks 10 to 150 this, but it doesn't mean you can't play it. Just you see the difference between the ownerships between the slant and the millie and the play action, that it's much sharper. I mean, it's maybe not completely sharp, but it's much better. So to me, in the slant, it's easier for me to gauge where I need to get leverage.
Mhm.
I don't mind playing the 150 lineups into this because I know I could better predict the ownership. In the play action type of thing, I'd be jamming in. Just give me the top projected lineups that have correlation and just like start jamming them in.
Just run.
Right, maybe not the highest owned ones, but like I could do that. But in the Wildcat or something like that, or the single entry small field. So like in the double spy that I played, I hand built I think 5 or 6 lineups
Mhm.
into single entry 3-max this week. And this is the smallest one that I entered, which is the double spy, 833 entries. I overstacked. The top game that I had yesterday was the Buccaneers Miami, the
Same.
Dolphins.
Yeah. Same.
And I played both sides. I had a lot of Jacoby Brissett on one side. I had a lot of Brady on the. I mean, but I was over the pricing on the Dolphins were cheap enough, and I think Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette were too cheap that I didn't mind overstacking. So like in smaller field, I didn't do this in large field. Large field, I still played at most a 3+1. But you see in this lineup that I played Brady plus Fournette plus Godwin plus Brown plus Waddle plus Gesicki.
Damn.
So a 4+2. Came in 53rd, 193 points. And then I filled it out with Madison, Henry, Washington defense. I mean, just chalk. In hindsight, I probably should have gone Adams plus Vikings defense. I would have gained it. Only cost me $200, right? I would have came in like 18th for $700. So it's not like it's that big of a deal. Henry plus Washington projected 1.5 points higher than Adams plus Vikings. But I knew that in small field contests, the Washington and Eagles defenses would be the chalk 20+% owned defenses, especially in single entry.
Mm-hmm.
I should have, for that 1.5 points, I should have 9% owned Vikings defense and like 35% owned Adams over 40% owned Henry.
Yeah.
It would have been worth, I mean, I would have gained about 15 percentage points in ownership for 1.5 points of projection. And that, in hindsight, that's what I should have done. But essentially, when I built the 4+2, I just basically said, how do I get Madison and Chalk in?
Mm-hmm.
I only have so many spots. So, I mean, like, it's very easy to just jam him in. But I did this also with Brissett. So playing like Brissett plus Waddle plus Gesicki plus Fournette plus Evans plus Brown. Like that type of lineup. But this is for single entry 3 max. I thought that game, obviously the Cowboys-Giants game, if you stack the Cowboys-Giants game yesterday, well, it got there. It got to 64 points. Anyone in your lineup that was a Giant that wasn't Kadarius Toney, it was pretty much Ingram, who didn't do much. They were in the game, right?
That was really, really frustrating yesterday. Because like I even said on stream, somebody asked me like, why wouldn't I like Kadarius Toney more than I would like John Ross? And I'm like, Kadarius Toney is not used in a higher upside way than John Ross is. And then Kadarius Toney breaks OBJ's rookie record for yards for the Giants.
Yeah, but that's what happens. You originally have Shepard and Slayton out, right?
Yeah.
So that puts Toney on the board because he's going to be he's going to act as Sterling Shepard. He's going to be in the slot.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. He's going to get some targets.
Right. Okay. So, which is fine for cash. That's why I looked at, I had plenty of Toney. Yeah. And Toney was cash viable at 4,000. And if you played him in cash, that's fine. But then Golladay goes down. Right. So it's like now CJ Board, he's not so basically Kadarius Toney became Devontae Adams in that offense because he's like, who else is there to throw the ball to?
It was so funny because at halftime, I was in third in the power sweep at halftime in that game. And I'm like, okay, well, I know that I can't take first. Like that's already off the board. I'm already pretty much.
You have Dak in that lineup?
No, I had Tom Brady.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he was
so like I'm done.
Stack.
Yeah, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, I know I can't place first, but like I can probably place still like top 10, probably. And I typed it in the Discord. I was like, okay, I guess the only thing that I'm fading is Kadarius Toney.
Well, that didn't work out.
That didn't work out. But yeah, Kadarius Toney just going absolutely ham. And that was one of the things. He was 16% owned in the power sweep. Like he wasn't low owned. So for that to come out, I mean, that's what I meant, like kind of the beginning of the show, like so many people were able to tout so many screenshots this morning because like pretty much every play that was like touted just got there, especially in higher stakes. You asked me,
I mean, if we take a look at the average ownership between all these, the Wildcat, I'm just going to go by average. Okay. Madison, 41% on average in all these contests.
Yeah.
30 points. Henry, 34 points. Adams, 40 points. Fournette, who's only 5,200, 21 points. CeeDee Lamb, you didn't need him, but he got 18 points. Gesicki's a tight end, so who cares? It didn't matter. Laviska, I mean, pretty much that $4,800 range, that Chenault didn't get there. Higgins got 10 points, didn't really get you there. Waddle, 5 points, didn't really get you there. AJ Brown didn't get there. Then we have like James Robinson, Damian Williams. I mean, it wasn't that hard to get 20 points out of a running back slot.
It wasn't
this week. And most likely you got 30, right? Most likely you were able to get like 60 points combined out of running back spots. So it wasn't that, if you had James Robinson at 24 points, like it wasn't even that special, right? I mean, you pretty much, you needed guys like Tony, you needed, because he's only 4,000 and getting 32 points. Jamar Chase, 30 points at 13% on average. And obviously like Mike Williams. I mean, he was
5% owned,
but I mean, he was the low owned piece. And you needed the Herbert or Brady. Because they destroy. I mean, from the quarterback. I mean, at the quarterback position, we go by fantasy points. I mean, they destroyed like the next highest. Okay, from an ownership perspective, Prescott had 25 points at 9% owned. Burrow 20 points at 7% owned. Herbert 3%, 45 points. Brady 7%, 40 points. The next highest point quarterback is 13 points behind, and that's Jameis Winston. At 0.49.
Nobody's taking Jameis Winston yesterday.
Davis Mills at 0.05% and Baker Mayfield at 0.32%. But still, that's like insane. When you could beat, if you have Herbert or Brady, you have to a quarterback that was owned at least. I mean, you had a 15 to 20 point head start on any other lineup, and obviously they're paired with receivers that did well also. So, like you needed basically the Chargers, Browns, and the Bucks. Dolphins games, and really not even the Dolphins, unless you had Gaskin. How about Gaskin?
I don't care.
Eating up everything. Of course, he only played 23% of the snaps last week.
This week's Cordero Patterson.
Right, exactly. No, well, I mean, he was on the field a lot. I'm assuming. I mean, this is when we predict like outcomes of games. Like, I'm going to assume that with Parker out. Like they're playing the Bucks, so they're gonna have to pass the ball a lot. There was no reason to play Malcolm Brown as much as they did the week before. So you would play Myles Gaskin because he's a much better pass catching running back. Like that's that's what we could think of in hindsight. But if we try to do that for every game, we're gonna be wrong half the time anyway, right? So to me, there's no purpose in thinking that way. But it makes logical sense that against the Buccaneers that they wouldn't even bother trying to run the ball. And that's why they'd have Gaskin out more than that. But if you look at Gaskin's usage over the past 4 weeks, I mean, that could have easily been like whoever's the fourth running. It could. Salvin Ahmed actually was the third down back and caught balls. It could have been him, and Gaskin sitting there with like 3 touches. So
I had Gaskin.
Never known.
I had Gaskin with a ceiling of 10 fantasy points. He had over 10 catches. So, you asked me where I had Alexander Mattison projected. As we were talking about the OBJ thing. So I had him, if you consider just flex position, not quarterback, I had him as the second highest projection.
Right. Yeah, I'm not considering quarterback.
Yeah. So behind,
don't tell me you had Madison over Adams, like you had OBJ over Adams.
No, Adams was the top overall.
Okay. So you had him
and I didn't have OBJ over Adams either. I had Adams. I always have Adams projected as like the top overall.
Okay. But so you had Madison over Henry.
Barely. I had Madison at 21.4 and I had Henry at 20.74.
Yeah. I had Henry
right there.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, still at 5,500 at that level with the 20+ point projection.
Yeah, and I should say, like, I don't think that his, like a projection of 20-ish, 21.49 at 5,500, that's a really, really good play. And it makes sense why he was so highly owned. But it is a discussion of like, what do you think his efficient ownership should have been?
Say about 65%.
65%. So like
on this slate at running back, yeah. I mean, and I'm looking through projections. I had Chuba Hubbard for 15.9, and Joe Mixon for around 16, Leonard Fournette for around 15. Like Alexander Mattison was by far overall for his price just a ridiculously good play. So that's kind of like something that I try to think about is like why
where would I have wanted to have him? Like in the power sweep, he's 60% owned. I was fine playing him at 60% owned, but at what point would I want to do have faded him?
Well, I think at 65% owned,
That's about right.
He was neutral. So
Yeah.
like if you wanted to not play him and try to get leverage that way, I thought it would have been fine. But I think you benefit more, especially at a running back. People think running back is a low variance position. I don't think it is with the touchdown variance of running back. That like on this slate, especially like in single entry stuff, especially, I'm just let other people make it. I'll build it around a different way when it comes to a $5,500 running back. Like I did not consider Fournette to be anywhere near the same level. Like I'm obviously lower projection, right? But I'm talking about as far as the range of outcomes. I think Alexander Madison's range of outcomes was much narrower. And I mean, I had a higher ceiling and a much higher floor than Leonard Fournette with Gio Bernard back in the picture, right? Like, to me, I think Fournette was probably overowned originally heading into the slate until the Madison ownership ate away at everyone else's ownership. So Fournette came in at a decent rate and not over-owned. But like, to me, like the guy that I'm more likely to fade in the lineup is Henry because he's 9,000.
Right.
Not because I don't think he's going to do well or his projection's bad. It's just that like Derrick Henry on this slate wasn't necessary. He scored 34 points and you didn't need him to win. Right. I think he was was he the highest scoring running back?
Yes. Well, what did Myles Gaskins?
No. Derrick Henry was the highest scoring running back. Eckler had just under a 33.9 points. So 34, like pretty much the same as Henry. Gaskin, who was barely owned, had 32. Right? 0.21%. But Madison at 30, Kamara at 5% on average, 29 points. Elliott 28 points at 7%. Chubb 27 points. Najee 25, Robinson 24, Kareem Hunt 25. Like, depending on who your wide receivers was, I mean, if you had Mike Williams in the lineup, like, you didn't need Henry.
No,
right? If you had Mike Williams and Alexander Madison and Alvin Kamara, like, you probably did fine. I mean, like you didn't need. There was so many of these running backs that scored enough points. And if we go to wide receiver, like really it drops off. Like Adams, Williams, then Antonio Brown, Kadarius Toney, Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, Cortland Sutton, and Claypool around 27, 28. And then it goes down to Chris Moore at no ownership at 24 points. Marquez Callaway, 0.76, 25 points. Then we get to Justin Jefferson's 22, and it's like, that's not good enough.
Right.
CeeDee Lamb's 18 is not good enough. Hopkins 20 is not good enough.
Once you get out of that top five, especially because that top five was so highly owned. And that's the important part here, I think. Like those guys scoring all those points, if the ownership is more spread out, I think that you have more outs. And we kind of talk about that a little bit, like when we talk about multi-positional eligibility and stuff like that. When you have more outs and when you have more availability and like more options, you don't necessarily need to hit the perfect combination. This week you needed the perfect combination because like
no, you had multiple, I mean, you had multiple ways to get there, but much more limited.
Right.
I mean,
but just speaking of wide receiver here individually, like the wide receivers.
You needed Herbert plus Williams or Brady plus Antonio Brown plus
and Mike Evans.
Like Mike Evans or either or both of them. But based on the quarterback position and the wide receiver position, if you didn't have that, it didn't matter what running backs.
If you didn't stack the Chargers or the Bucks, like you were
dead. You were dead the first place. You would like there was no way to fit all these guys in. You wouldn't have a lineup with Adams, Williams, and Brown with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Like that wouldn't have gotten there.
Right.
You needed Brady, Herbert, and obviously Brady and Herbert are tied to three of the 3 of the 6 receivers that scored 30 plus points are tied to the 2 quarterbacks that scored 40 plus points.
Right.
you can't win. I mean, yeah, I had some good lineups with Cortland Sutton in it as a 1% 28 pointer.
Yeah.
But it didn't mean anything because like I don't have Mike Williams in that lineup, or I don't have Devontae Adams in the lineup, so it didn't matter.
Oh, by the way, Cortland Sutton was my OBJ this week. What did you have Cortland Sutton at?
Let me take a look. Cortland Sutton. Let's go by fantasy points. I had him at just under 14.
Okay, I had him at 20.
20? What? No, that's run. Come on, that's ridiculous.
Bro, that's why my model works, because guys like Cortland Sutton and OBJ and these guys who get these massive market shares of air yards and their quarterbacks like treat
OBJ
them.
had a 10% target share yesterday.
And he was
in a game where there was 89 points scored.
Yesterday,
James,
OBJ
89 points scored. He's 2 for 20. That was
yesterday. OBJ projected for 13 fantasy points. For me,
yeah, but that's on point,
right? Yeah, but that's the thing is like as we continue getting more data for this year, it's going to evolve. So yeah, obviously OBJ projecting less this week, but Cortland Sutton projecting for 20. You know and we've talked about that. We talked about that with baseball too. Where like with my models, what I want to do is I want to hit on things before they actually like come to fruition. That's how I always treat it.
Let me get back over here. Yeah, I'd back him at 12 points something or other.
Yeah, that's about right.
Right.
Ceiling of 26.
No, 20 points for Sutton. No. Yeah, I
mean, ceiling of Sutton is 36.
Yeah, but I don't get. Obviously, your ceiling is a million. Whatever.
Oh, stop! You know that there's ways
really?
to actually calculate that.
What did you have for DJ Moore? So you had him over DJ Moore. You had him over Jefferson.
Yeah, DJ Moore 18.25. Justin Jefferson 21.5.
Okay, well, I don't see how you get Sutton 20 points. It's wrong. It's just wrong.
Well, like you say that, but he did have 28.
Yeah, but OBJ last week had 5 points, and
had him but like OBJ also should have had like a 62-yard touchdown.
Oh, should have.
He missed.
Sutton could have not come down with one of those catches.
That's the thing that we're doing here, though. Like,
right.
If things work out the way that I would have liked them to work out in my projections, then OBJ crushes last week. Same thing with Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton had like what a 50-yard touchdown or something.
Yeah, but I'm arguing with you. I had like way over the field on Cortland Sutton,
which is beautiful.
But because in that price range, he was going to be like 1%. I mean, people were concerned about the injury, and I'll take a shot on. Yeah, he's the number 1 receiver. So like,
I mean, he was 0.7% owned in the power suite.
Right. Well, I'm talking about even in the slant, he was like 1.28%, but that's even less than what I have him projected on. I thought Cortland Sutton would be 3%.
I had him 5. Yeah, I had him like
so there you
4.2.
go. Right. So it ended up being I should have had more of them. Then.
Yeah, you should have just listened to my projections.
Right. I should have just bumped them up 8 points for no reason.
It was 6 points. You said you had him at 14.
No, it'd have been. I don't know where, but mine is an aggregate. So
yeah. What did I have? Let's see. So I had him for around 20. Oh yeah, I was even over Vegas by a lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 20 is ridiculous.
Yeah. I was pretty close on a lot of things for Vegas this week, which makes sense. Like after week 4, that's when my models start to stabilize quite a bit. Because like the first 3 weeks, I always say like that there's so little that you can actually glean from the data for the first 3 weeks. But after 4 weeks, we kind of know what teams want to do. We kind of know what play callers actually want to do. We know what the adjusted scripts are. So that helps out my models a lot because I build top down. I build like I start at Vegas and then I start at the team and then I go to the team level off of Vegas. And then from the team level, I go down to player level. So that after 4 weeks, after 5 weeks, better after 7 weeks, like I have a lot of confidence in the way things work out. But this week, I mean, my largest difference over Vegas was Cortland Sutton, who Vegas had projected for like 13.7. And then I was over on Ross Dwelly and Melvin Gordon, but not even by that much. Like Vegas had Ross Dwelly at 7.6, basically 8. I had him at 12. Melvin Gordon, Vegas had at 8. I had at 12. And then after that, I wasn't that far over on anybody. Over on Aaron Jones by like 1 point. I think I was under Vegas on a lot of different guys. Yeah, I was under Vegas on Herbert, Towney, Murray. I was under on QBs, it looks like. But I'm fine being under on QBs because I think that I'm better at QBs than Vegas is most of the time.
Okay, let me look through some of the YouTube chat. Feel free to type any questions. We're always here to. I know we talk about a lot of stuff that happened yesterday. What we do. Ruben says, "Hey Blender, how did you manage to make you're over 200 lineups in less than an hour after all projections need to be updated to show Madison is it in? It's not that hard. It's not that hard. I download all the projection sources and I aggregate it into lineup HQ and they rerun. I was running lineups before then. I was running lineups at 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning. I don't know about the Madison news, but I'm playing a whole bunch of stuff. So it's just like, okay, so I've in my pool, in that range especially, like if I go to running back, like I have Fournette, I have Damian Harris, I have Damian Williams, I have Chase Edmonds, I have Josh Jacobs, I have James Robinson, I have Chuba Hubbard, I have Swift, I have Mixon. I mean, like all those guys could end up turning into Madison. Now, do I do a swap like that? No, but just like I'm making very similar type of lineups with those guys. And I still have like Najee Harris and Zeke. And so all I know is that like once Madison's in, I put him up to 50+%. And I just basically bump down like every other running back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like instead of having 6% Damian Harris, I now have 2%. Instead of having 20% Damian Williams, I have 16%. And I just start bumping everything down and seeing what fits. But the stacks are all practically going to be, the defense ends up changing, right? Like, I have enough people in my pool. Right. It didn't change that dramatically. So I was able, once all the Madison projections were in the Blitz and the other sources that I use, like, that was what? I think 12, look, it says here 1207 is when I updated it. Right? So 1207, I have my DK ag, I name them. Because I have one for Saturday, I have one for Sunday morning, just so I know that I'm using the current whatever set that I'm using for whatever site. And then I run. I mean, 1207. By the time 1230 came around, I had all my. I was perfectly fine with all my lineups.
Well, and you've already set up your entire, like you've already set up your group.
I already have my player groups. I already have
stacks. Like you've done all of those things. That's kind of the thing. Like MME and NFL is so nice because you have days to set those things up. I mean, like from basically,
and you don't even need days.
No,
you have an hour.
But you have them. You have them. Right. Like if you,
it's not like basketball. You have no time.
Oh, dude, you're screwed in basketball. You're just absolutely over a barrel in basketball. I hate doing that for basketball because like those groups on Wednesday or even on Thursday, even on Friday, even if you don't even want to look at anything until after the injury report on Friday, you have all of Friday night and Saturday and Sunday morning to set up your groups, your stacks, your exposures, like where you want to be overweight, where you want to be underweight, all of these different things. You have a totally curated pool by the time that Sunday morning comes around because you have an entire day and a half to do so. And people think when people think about MME, they're like, oh, well, I have to set up like all these different things and I have to run it all these different ways. It's like, yeah, but in NFL, you have 36 hours to do those things.
But look at my groups, like James. These are the groups that I had. I had what? Q? How many letters are in the alphabet? I don't know, 15 groups or so, 17 groups.
How many letters?
But look, most of these groups are like, I typically running backs against each other are negatively correlated. So I don't like playing them together if given the choice. So I like Barkley Elliott. Here's a group that I have. When Dak Prescott is in the lineup, use at least one of Lamb or Cooper. So that prevents me from having Dak Prescott plus Dalton Schultz as the stack. Right. As in a 1+, it's Prescott, Schultz, and then Giants run back. I don't want that. I want one of the two main wide receivers. I don't play Mixon and Jones together. Here, if Aaron Rodgers happens to be in the lineup, make sure to use Devontae Adams. Right? Just he has to have Devontae Adams in the lineup. Here's one. If Joe Burrow is the conditional player, have 1 to 2 of Chase, Boyd, Higgins.
Yep.
So this means that I'm not getting, instead of me trying to say, how do I keep Uzoma out of Burrow lineups like that. I just go when Burrow's in the lineup. You need to. I don't mind Uzoma if he's along in a 3+1. I don't want Uzoma in 2+1s. Burrow, Uzoma. So I just do that. I mean, but you could do this Saturday night. I mean, you could do this Sunday morning. You know how long it takes me to set up these groups?
Right, but you don't have to do it after you get the Alexander Madison chalk, that or the news. Like, that's the point. You don't have to reset this whole system.
This is what I had to do. Look, I added one more group, Swift Madison, 0-1.
Yeah.
That what else do I have to do?
I mean, you don't, but that's my point.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
Right. If I have Mac Jones in the lineup, make sure to use one of Myers or Aguilar. So
you could have just thrown that away by removing Mac Jones from your pool.
Well, I didn't.
Well, you should have.
I should have had Davis. I should have Look, dude, I had so many Mac Jones plus Jacoby Myers plus Brandon Cooks lineups.
Just do a secondary stack. Why do you need Mac Jones? And the over-under is like 36 or something.
They projected well. They projected
well.
That Myers and Cooks projected well. And what ends up happening is the correct usage of that was just the Davis Mills naked double stack. Davis Mills plus Chris Conley plus Chris Moore. Like that's the stack to use with no Patriots run back.
Just secondary stack that, man. I did the same. I did
the secondary stacks didn't work out either. Myers
plus Cooks, but like even like with Mac Jones, I don't understand why anybody would play Mac Jones. Well, I don't get it.
I played 220 lineups, James.
So have more of somebody good. Have more of like a team that can score points. The Patriots haven't been able to score points in 3 years. Doesn't matter. I mean, like you could have had. Where was Mac Jones projected?
I don't care about the quarterbacks. I care about the receivers. The quarterback, who cares? What did you? Okay, what did you have? We're gonna do the projection thing. What did you have for Myers?
Okay, for Jacoby Myers, right?
Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers at 13.
I had him at 16.5.
Okay, you overprojected him.
Oh, okay. So now I'm the one that's wrong. How about Brandon Cooks?
Brandon Cooks, I had Brandon Cooks at 15.6.
I had 16.95.
Okay, you overprojected.
Okay, so now at least now we're arguing about the projection, but had those two guys been projected in the same way,
even
like
at 16?
It makes the Mac Jones skinny stack lineups, or with like Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry.
Absolutely not. No, I would not have had Mac Jones projected for 16 fantasy points in my stacks. Okay, in my stacks projections. New England.
I had Mac Jones at 18.
Okay, I had a New England stack of Mac Jones, Jacoby Myers, and Nelson Aguilar for 38. 38. That is.
Well, you don't play them two together. You play one of the other, and you play Smith or Henry in the tight end.
Why would you play Mac Jones with one receiver?
No, you play with the tight end. You fill a garbage tight end spot.
Okay. So Mac Jones.
And then you play Brandon Cooks, who projects.
I
had Brandon Cooks with a 3-point higher projection than Cortland Sutton.
Well, that's because you were wrong, Jordan. I don't know what to tell you.
Cortland Sutton getting a better projection than Calvin Johnson in his prime. I think Calvin Johnson would have been projected like Devontae Adams. Let's be honest about that.
Calvin Johnson would have been projected like God, right?
Right. But we're arguing right now over the projections.
No, I'm arguing.
If you had those projections, my projections, all those three players were like total combined 7 points higher than yours.
Sure.
Like so we're just from the decision of doing that, the lineups look good using my numbers, just like you're playing Bridgewater Sutton would have looked much better in your model because Sutton you had 6 points higher projected than I did.
I just think that like when you look at, because I care a lot about Vegas too. I care a lot about the over-unders on that. And if Vegas has that game at 39, which I think is what it closed at, right? It closed it over at 39. For New England, they had an implied team total of 23.5. I mean, why would I go there instead of going with Tampa Bay at 29?
Well, no. Well, I'm not going instead of. The reason why I played lower total teams is because we only had we only had 2 games that were 50 plus totals. These past
Sure,
couple of
but
weeks
there are
when you have
still
5 of them.
there are still all these other teams. I mean, Minnesota projected at 29.75 for a team total.
So I played Madison. So there you go. What's wrong with that? So you played Madison in my Mac Jones line.
I'm not a fan of stacking teams that have super low totals.
No, I mean, I was when the total amount of points on the slate are lower, then I have no problem. I have no problem doing it.
I think that
If it's lower,
generally, yes.
We've the first 4 weeks. I'm doing the ASA show, and we're talking. We have 5 or 6 games that are 50 plus totals. It's like
yeah, and we
no
didn't
way
have
I'm
any of
stacking
those
a 40
teams on the
plus
slate.
point. Right.
Right. I
This
understand
was
that.
Right. This was a slate where the totals weren't. We didn't have the Chiefs Bills game on the main slate. Right. I mean, like a lot of the Rams Seahawks on Thursday night. Like a lot of these teams are off the slate. So it's like as long as like a couple of these games fail, it's like, dude. Maybe the Patriots put up 28 points and I have all the good one-off secondary correlations of everything else. And Mac Jones getting 23 points at quarterback like that could be enough. I guess would have been if we took the Chargers game and the Buccaneers game off the slate, like quarterback wouldn't have mattered anymore.
Sure. Yeah. I guess the way that I look at it and the way that I wrote about it was why use Mac Jones in that stack when you could have just had Jacoby Myers, Brandon Cooks. And I said the same thing. I did that
also, and they ruined my lineups there as well.
Right. But I said the same thing about the Broncos and the Steelers. I didn't like stacking that game, but I really liked Cortland Sutton and Deontay Johnson. So I did have that secondary stack. That was in my best lineup. If I have Chase Claypool, then I finish, 14th or whatever. But like those kind of things where I think there is just a massive market share going to individual players. I don't usually like stacking that. I don't like stacking New England because Jacoby Myers is like, he's all you really want from New England anyway. So if they're facing Houston, where you get Brandon Cooks coming back, I'd rather just use those two and stack a higher total game.
Okay, but I'm playing 220 lineups.
I get it. It's because you're a baller.
Right. Jeff Balistreri, was it a bad move in my part to play a third of my lineups as a cousin stack to leverage off of Madison? Obviously, my other 2 lineups had him. I don't think it's a bad move in the smaller field contest. If you were playing small, like we said before, you have to go. It's ownership is not just one thing. It depends on the contest that you're in. So if we take a look at the Madison ownership, let me go here. Like if you did that in higher stakes, smaller field contests, then you're actually getting leverage by doing so. The best way to think about that is, was it the better move? There's no right or wrong moves because we're talking about lineups, not players. Look, I don't know what contests you had them in, but go look at the contest. How owned was Madison? If Madison was only 30% owned, 25% owned in that contest, it was probably a better move to just play Madison. If Madison was 60+% owned, 50, 60, 70% owned, then I think your line you got the requisite leverage by not playing Madison and playing a lower projected lineup that was negatively correlated to them. You may have made up that median projection difference with the amount of relative value that you have in your lineup, but it's all dependent on the contest that you're playing. So most likely, if you were playing something more like the Spy or a very under 1,000 and Madison was 60+% owned, I would have considered that. I didn't because it was 11:30. I'm just jamming in Madison. I already made my choices. Cousins, nothing really changed in the projection when Madison for anyone else in the game. Thielen, Jefferson, Cousins. So it's like I wasn't playing the Vikings passing stack to begin with. And I didn't think I got enough leverage, especially in the larger stuff, that it warranted even to do it. But yes, I guess I could have thought about it and said in the smaller field stuff, maybe the cousin stack was leverage. But I thought, especially the news being 90 minutes before lock, it's more likely that Madison comes in under-owned than over-owned. So like when that's the case, I just jam them. To me, you can't go wrong. Even if Madison got injured on the first play, still don't think more likely an inactives 90 minutes before lock type of thing happens. You stand to benefit more by jamming them than by, well, if the field's going to do this, I'm going to like, don't you overestimate the intelligence of the field.
For what it's worth, I do think that having a hedge probably made sense there. And I considered as well, I had Minnesota projected well because I had a 29.75 team total, but like, I think it also depends on how much of your portfolio you're willing to dedicate to it. I think 33% is too much. If you only have 3 lineups, I don't think that it's necessary to go against what is like very obviously just like the best play on the slate by a long shot. If you have 200 lineups like MME Bender over here, then you can like dedicate like 10% or something like that to Minnesota, 5%, something like that. But 33%, probably a little bit too much. And when you only have 3 lineups, it's not even really thinking about 33%. Like that's such a massive, especially like if you're like me and you're only playing power sweep and I only have those 3 entries, dedicating one of those to like that large of a leverage thing when I think there are so much other better spots to attack. It's like, it's just too risky. And I'm a risky person.
No, it's not too risky. The Cousins lineups did not come nowhere near the projection for a contest that small that was worth. Like Madison would have to be 20% owned. Would have to be like 80% owned,
Right.
to even come. And even then, may not be worth. I mean, I ran what I do when I research, and I show on the pregame show, like I showed last week, researching constructions of lineups and what their projections look like in combination. I'm running hundreds upon hundreds of lineups. So I'm not just running 150 and seeing whatever happens. Like, no, I'm running 300 lineups here, 300 lineups this way, 300 lineups that way. And like, dude, like Cousins isn't showing up like anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like as a stack, I get some Jefferson. I barely get Thielen. I wasn't getting much of Dalvin Cook at the time. So it's like, dude, like I was getting more Mac Jones. I was getting more Jacoby Brissett than I was getting Kirk Cousins Vikings stacks from a projection standpoint. What even if I did Cousins plus 1 of Jefferson or Thielen and just make it a skinny, and like these lineups would project like 10 points lower than other lineups, like just with the same ownership. So it's like, why am I playing these lineups? So like in something like the power sweep or whatever, yes, the decision on can you make up those 10 points is all dependent on how owned Madison is. So if we believe, if I say I believe his efficient ownership is between 60 and 65%, that means Madison, in order, if it's not leverage on the 60 to 65%, if you play him at 60 to 65%, which means that the 10 points of projection that you're making up doesn't exist. The only way you can start making up that 10-point projection gap is when Madison goes over owned. So once he gets up to 70, once he gets up to 75, and you're playing something negatively correlated to that completely, you need that to happen. So the first thing that you have to think of when you think of leverage plays, okay, with our leverage stacks, whatever you want to call it, leverage plays meaning someone that is negatively correlated to a high-owned player. It's not the high-owned player. It has to be an over-owned player. So you first, before you think about leverage stuff, you have to go, what is the efficient ownership of this player? Okay, even if you're guessing, right? Oh, I don't know how to calculate that number. I don't exactly calculate that number either, right? I'm running lineups and seeing where they show up and whatever. It's like I can't not get Madison in lineups or whatever. But then I'm looking at some non-Madison lineups that are like 4-point different in projection. I'm like, okay, it's more viable not to play them also, but it's still like you're probably playing a lot of them. And I figured, guesstimated, around 60% efficiently owned. And that's about what I played him at, right? I thought he would end up coming in at like 40, 45, depending on the contest that you're playing. But in all my single entry 3 max, I played him in all my, by default, 90 minutes before lock, he's more likely to be under-owned than over-owned. So why am I leveraging anything? If it's more like, if we knew Madison, if Cook was out on Thursday, I think that's James, you would think it's a much different story. We wouldn't see this. This Wildcat ownership at 63% may have been, if we knew on Thursday, would have been like 70 to 75%. And in the play action, it wouldn't have been 23%. It would have been 40.
Yeah, I don't think it would have raised much in the higher stakes, because I think higher stakes is a lot sharper on where he needs to be. But lower stakes, like absolutely, we see him in the 45 to 50% range. I had him projected 35%, but like 35% is across everything, right? So, yeah, if it comes out Thursday, he's definitely way higher owned. And the things that come out later, I still think that we've seen kind of like on either side of it, where guys are either way over owned or way under owned, but typically we're seeing them under owned for sure.
Right. So that's why I jam. Typically the late news I jam.
Mm-hmm.
If it's late, if it's that late, I'm whatever. I probably should have jammed higher. Right. I probably should have had less Brandon Cooks and Jacoby Myers.
You overprojected them.
It wasn't me. I'm not projecting anything. I'm not the one doing it. I'm aggregating. Okay, James, paydirtdfs.com. If you want to get James's projections,
you're smiling.
that obviously of Cortland Sutton somehow for 20 points
got 28.
I mean, it was fit. I mean, in that year projection, he would be a cash lock at that projection.
No, he wouldn't have, because of the way that I play cash.
Well, you don't. All right, because you don't play cash. But had I used it would have been he would have been over Waddle or Chenault or Higgins in that range.
And look what it would have gotten you.
Right, because it's all about the results, not the process. But paydirtdfs.com, that's where you could get the James's stuff, or we teach all this type of things. When we're talking about leverage and relative value, this is all in our course, right? The theory of daily fantasy sports, how to think like a professional DFS player. It applies to any sport. So like, this is not just for NFL. So you get here, it's 15 hours long. It's like going to a seminar in your pocket. You can listen to it most people listen to it multiple times. And this is how you play DFS. There's no complex mathematical formulas in here. Although you can make them complex mathematical formulas, but these are the concepts that professional players use to win at DFS. Cash games, GPPs, anything. It is the game theory of daily fantasy sports. So pick that up. Theoryofdfs.com. James, next week we only have a 10-game slate, so there's less players for you to weirdly project for. I think that's going to be the running joke now. That has to, after OBJ last week.
No, yeah, we got to keep going. We got to find the one guy.
I didn't think there would be one. I didn't think there would be one. But when you're like, you had a ton of Cortland Sutton.
Yeah,
like, okay.
Yeah. No, I
thought he was good play for his ownership, and you're like, nope. I had him projected over Jerry Rice. It doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah, we're going to find one every week. It's probably going to be a wide receiver most weeks. I don't think it's going to be a running back, because I'm pretty conservative with running back stuff. But who knows? We'll find one. We're going to find one next week where it's like, why did James project this guy? Like
Zach Pascal, 27-point projection. I don't know how you didn't have it, right?
And then you overprojected somebody. That's it.
What, you go by 2 points, not by 6? Okay. So James is found at paydirt_DFS. I'm at Blender HD. I'll be back on later today, 7:30 Eastern time for the Showdown pre-lock show with Chief Justice Will Priester. And I'll be back tomorrow, probably going over that slate and other stuff, answering your DFS strategy questions, as I always do here on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.